All right, so we're moving back to the rear passenger door. I bought one at a discount because it had a little bit of damage. It's really not that bad. It's just pulled back a hair here, maybe a half inch. I think it should be a pretty easy fix. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use a light mallet and a couple different service tools to get this thing lined back up. It'll probably take a little bit of filler. We'll get to that, but I think we'll be just fine in doing it. All right, so what I need to do now is basically get a profile of the edge of this back front door. Now, of course, because the passenger side is already screwed up, I can't get it off that. I'm going to pull it off the driver's side, and all I really have to do that, I'm going to take a piece of thicker paper, just like you see here, and I'm going to outline that edge, and then I'm going to put it up on a piece of glass, and I'll mirror it on the opposite side, and now I have my right profile that I'll be able to put up to the back door now, and kind of figure out exactly how far these the dents or whatever it is that has to be pulled out. All right, and that should give you kind of point of reference as to how far, right about there, that part and that part there has to come out. So I'm going to keep on working on that. I'll get it out as far as I can, and then we'll hit it with the glass. All right, so here we go, guys. I've got it pretty darn good. It's definitely not perfect, but you can definitely see it's definitely tailored more to the way it's supposed to be. You can see maybe at the angle there's a little bit of area to be raised here. There's not a whole lot I can do about that because there's a little bit of gap between the metal, so I can't really smash the metal back. And I have different glue tools and stuff. I really don't want to deal with that. I don't mind a little bit of filler there. Slow dip here, and that's okay. I worked most of this out. It was pretty hard to get out because there was a pretty solid crease popped up there. And then if we take our gauge, we can kind of get an idea of how close it is. You can see there's a little bit of gap right there, and then a little bit up here that I'm going to have to play with. And I have a little tack welding to do right here to fill that in. But I think that's a well-deserved $600 that we saved on this back door. So instead of paying $950, I got it for $350. So I think that's pretty darn good. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start doing a little bit of tack welding. That doesn't really matter. Then I'll show you how I put some Bondo on and see if we can get this thing smoothed out. All right, even though the shop's a mess right now, I got the first coat of, I guess, base on, you could say. This is actually Fast Goods, which is actually a top coat, but it's actually really old now. I need to throw it away, and it's thick. It still works fine for base coat when you want to put a heavier application, but normally this is kind of real flowing, I guess you could say, and works great for leveling. So this needs to get thrown away. I need to grab some more, but I'm going to let that thing dry right there. We'll sand it to finish that we need, and then we'll start putting another layer on. All right, so right now we're waiting for the second layer of the body glaze to dry on the rear passenger door bottom corner. And I'm also still waiting for the front door and the fender to get here. So I figure why I got some time on my hands. I'm really sick of looking at this broken headlight and that fender rubbing against that tire right there. So I'm going to pull them off real quick. All right, to start to get the fender off, there's a bunch of 10 mil bolts you'll see all the way down here, going down. There's a 10 mil bolt down in there. I don't know if you can see it. And then one right there hiding, and I think this thing should pop off, so let me pull those out real quick. We'll see if it comes off so we can get to that headlight. All right, the fender's almost off. We got one more bolt holding it in, that big pile of carnage right there, as you can see. So I'm going to pull that thing out right there, and we'll rip this thing off. One less fender. Now to get this stupid headlight out. I don't know what's holding it. I don't think much is. Actually, nothing's holding it. Okay. So that's out of here. That was the easiest thing to take off I think I've ever had to do. We got a fog light down there. That's got to come out too because it is broke as well. I didn't realize it. But the back of it should have been kind of obvious. So I'm going to pull that off too. Which, again, I don't think anything's actually holding that in. And at least we got a couple things out of the way. So I think we're good to go to get back to that door and work on some of the body work. All right, so the body work on the rear door is now done. We had 3 different layers that we had to do in Bondo or body filler. And as you can see here, we've got great fitment in the end. So we're good there. All I got to do now is I'm going to have to obviously hit it with our primer coat, our base coat, our mid, and then our clear. But we'll do that obviously when we're painting the rest of the panels. I think what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to jump on that back quarter panel and start getting some of the dents out because I don't want to put this door on and line it up with it kind of pushing out the way it is. So I'm going to go ahead and fix some of that. Get that looking a little bit better, and then hopefully we can get this back door on for test fitting. All right, well, I'm not gonna lie, I'm halfway decent at body work, but this is next level stuff right here. Like, this is gonna be quite a bit of work. I've got PDR tools and everything else, but I don't know that anything that I have is gonna be able to do this. All I can do is try. Worst case scenario, if I gotta buy a new quarter, I'll buy a new quarter. It wouldn't be impossible to tie in. Literally, you can hide even a lot of the seams. If you don't want to run it from this very edge up here and pull this out, because you didn't want to take out the window, you could take out this trim on this window here and cut it decently. You can kind of see where it runs down here, and it would be running back here and down. Pull the back bumper. If I could get to it, it's just a lot more work, and it's another like $1,500 I really don't want to spend because you guys don't know this yet, but this build's getting a little bit out of hand. and we'll figure out exactly what that entails at the very end, exactly what the cost was and was it worth doing this. But nonetheless, right now I'm going to take my tools and I'm going to see if I can get this out. So let's see how I do. Also, what I'll probably be doing is I'll be making a guide just like I did on that door. I'll take a piece of cardboard and I'll run along the inside here on the good side, and I'll get basically a pencil and mark the edges so I have a good guide to go by. So when I'm pulling this thing out, I know that I don't go too far. So that should help us to a certain degree, but it ain't gonna do everything for us. Wish me luck. All right, so just starting, I already presented myself with a little bit of a problem. Typically, I would take a tool like this right here. Let's say for this dent here, for example, I'd take it and I'd push this right here on the top of this dent and work inward, which sounds kind of strange, but you actually work the dent inward and you'll pound around the outside edges, and that'll allow this part to pull forward. The issue that I'm running into now that I just realized is this is an outer skin and there's an inner skin, and it's about that thick of a difference, so I can't basically do anything from the back side of this to get this out. All I can do is try to pull this out from the face of it. Now, whether that be, you know, welding aluminum pins to it and pulling it out with a slide hammer, or using a glue tool, which would be my first step probably right now to see if I can get this thing out. The very bottom edges, even that has a dual layer, so there's not a lot of hope there, I'll be honest with you. So I might be forced to have to get a quarter, which I'm not real happy about, but at very least I'll see if I can pull this thing out with my dent pullers, and if it doesn't work, well, I guess that I'm gonna have to buy it. So let's see what I can do. All right, so my first step in getting this quarter panel taken care of is going to be using a rubber mallet here and just lightly tapping out some of this edge right here just to try to get it out a little bit. I don't want to hammer on it. I don't want to bend it out too bad. I just want to see if I can get some of it out without having to drill holes and pull the thing first. So let's go ahead and do a little hitting on this thing and see what it looks like. All right, so a 3-hour update. Yeah, this has not been easy. I'm not even going to try to make it look clean and pretty. Look at that. If you can just get an idea of how hard this has been, it's been a real hassle. It probably doesn't look like it, but I've got it out quite a bit with a method, about 10,000 different methods, and none of them are actually working great, but all of them are working just a little bit. I kind of got to the point where I was like, man, I don't think I can do this. But I kept going and it got better and I got better. Right now I'm using the $135 tool from your local HFT. I can't necessarily recommend it at this point because these little heads right here just keep ripping off, like you see right there. I've already broke 2 of them, and I'm at the point where I want to return it because it's not really working. I don't want to waste $135. But the $5 one, now this one pulls. It's what pulled most of this dent out here. It's what pulled most of that dent out there. It's what pulled a lot of this out right here. The key is using a better glue stick. I didn't use any of them with the $135 kit just because, again, I think I'm going to return it. But I had some really heavy-duty yellow type glue sticks, like the ones that come with that already, and they actually work really, really well. They're tough to get off, as you can kind of see here. But nonetheless, it's coming. I'm probably going to get another day tomorrow of maybe a couple hours. If I can get a little bit closer, enough to at least get that door on to see how it lines up, I think we might be able to do it. If not, I'll have to get a quarter panel like I said, but I think it's coming, and as you can see, if you can see, it's out a heck of a lot from what it was. So back at it tomorrow. All right, so I'm working on the last little dent that you see right down there, and I got everything sanded off down to the metal because we're gonna get ready to put some body filler on there. I got everything somewhat okay. This area is kind of rough right here. There wasn't a lot I can do with it. It was just pushed in too hard, and then the same with right here. Now you'll see there's a lot of small indents right here. Those I'm not worried about. Those will actually get filled in with body filler. What I need to be concerned with at this point is areas that are pushed outward. So I need to go over the entire thing, and I need to make sure that basically there's no areas in which are pointed out, because what happens is when you go to knock those in after you put Bondo on, you end up loosening and breaking your Bondo from the body, which is obviously not a good thing. You have to start from scratch again by stripping it down, which we don't want. So right now, again, I'm going to pull out this last little dent right here. I'm going to go over everything, see if I can get it to the point where there's no high spots on it. And at that point, we'll put our first layer of glass, and we'll see if it's shaping the way it should. And we'll see if I'm a total failure or if I actually did some body work in the right way this time. So let's go ahead and move forward. So I gotta admit, I learned something today. I thought these cars were entirely made out of aluminum to save weight. And I started looking at this because it's been sitting here. It's starting to rust. I'm like, well, aluminum doesn't rust. What happens if I put a magnet to it? Wow, it's actually not aluminum. I was wrong. And moving forward, we got some body filler on the back quarter panel. I am still waiting to put the back door on because it has to be painted first. I want to use that as a guide to make sure that the edge of our quarter there is perfect. But for now, I'm just trying to get things kind of close as I can so they can be ready to be sprayed and basically better lined up once that back door gets on. But again, this is the second coat. The first coat was almost perfect, except I kind of went up a little bit too high in the paint where the paint wasn't down to bare metal. You don't want that because it'll obviously separate itself. So I had to kind of grind a lot of that off and add a second coat right now. We're going to sand this down, and I think I got another 1 or 2 coats, and it should pretty well be dialed in. As you can see here, I don't know if you can probably see that or not, but it's fairly smooth. It looks actually pretty darn good, especially for not being sanded yet. But yeah, let's go ahead and move forward. And there is the back half of that quarter panel. Now, obviously, it's still ugly in the front. I don't have the door on again to match it up, but so far it's looking really good. I went ahead and sprayed a bunch of water on it. Got to get an idea of gloss and how it looked, and it's super smooth, no waves, so far it's pretty good. There's a few tiny, you can't see it right now, but there's a few tiny little imperfections that I gotta deal with, but that's basically next to nothing. So far it looks really, really good. I'm really basically pleased with it. Anyhow, I'm gonna get the other doors and stuff on, and we're gonna get the front of this thing finished up. And there is the rear half of the quarter panel. Now, so far it turned out really, really good. I went ahead and sprayed water on there like this, tried to make sure there was no waves or anything, and it's really smooth. Looks actually really good. Obviously it doesn't look good right there because we still have to get the door on and get the door lined up to make sure that that lines up the way it's supposed to, but the back half right now looks really good. So let's go ahead and move forward. All right, so moving forward, we're going to take off this front bumper because, well, obviously it needs a little bit of repair. Now, I've already had these upper bolts loose. I've had the shelf forward. The part that might be a little bit harder is it's probably clipped in on the bottom just like the rear is, which could be a little bit of a headache. So I'm going to go ahead, unbolt these bolts. I'm going to jack this thing up, see if I can get underneath it, and unbolt anything else that's connected to it. All right, guys, so it is now separated, and here's what I did. Obviously, you know that I took out the bolts up there. As I told you, all along the face of that bottom back there is clips all the way down to the outsides. On the inside of the wheel wells, once you pull the face back, you've got an 11mm bolt there, 11mm bolt there, and there's 2 10mm back on these pieces here. Which is, I'm actually pointing at that lower flap. So now it's off. We can see a little bit more about the actual unit itself and some of the damage from the inside. Obviously this all has to be rebonded to the bumper itself where it's supposed to be. And there's a little bit of, obviously, you can see plastic repair that has to be done, we'll be doing. But I'm gonna put this up on some stands and we'll get ready to start prepping this thing. And moving forward, we're going to start doing a little bit of body work on the front bumper. Now, there's going to be a mix here of basically sanding, using a heat gun, using a plastic welder, and a few different things to get some of these dents and bubbles out and get rid of the cracking that you see right here in the old paint. So I'm going to go ahead and hit it with the sander real quick, as you see, and then we'll see what it looks like and what I got to do from there. There is level 2 sand. You can see how much smoother and flatter it is getting. It's time to go ahead and use the plastic welder real quick. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to backfill it. So I'm going to be using extra material to be melting from the back side of it, because the last thing you want to do is melt the front and then lose your material on the front side. So what we do is you backfill from the back. That way you have a little bit of extra material to sand down if you have to. Usually at the end you do a little bit of body filler to kind of smooth out the non-perfections. But so far it's gone pretty good. There's a little bit of a crease right there. It's kind of hard to see, so I'll have to work that down. I might have to use a heat gun again, just kind of press it down. But we'll see as we get there. Right now I'm going to go ahead and use this from the back side, melt some material, and we'll see what this thing looks like when it's done. Here you'll see where we've worked extra material into the back side of it and kind of smoothed it out as best we could. Not like finished smooth, but enough to where it's going to be good and solid in some of these cracks. Here you'll see where there was a void or a large chunk missing about the size of a dime. So we went ahead and added material to the back, and then to the front here. We do have a little bit to do still right here, and then we'll hit it with the sander and smooth it out. And it should be pretty strong, so let me do that and then show you what that looks like. There is the end of stage 3. If you'll notice, it's definitely a lot better looking than before it started. So again, what we did is, you saw we backfilled, and then we went ahead and front sanded and then front filled. There's still a little bit that's going to take a little bit of body fill. You see a little bit of pitting right there. Very, very, very minimal, very small amounts. So it's actually working really, really well. And then of course we had this huge chunk that was missing right here. I got most of it filled in. I just had to take a Dremel that out, and then it'll take a little bit of body filler right there. That's good to go, as well as the tip that was broke off. It's back on. So far it's looking pretty good. And what would have been a $400 bumper basically cost me like nothing. So we're moving forward on this one. And here is our layer of body filler. Now this may only take one layer, and I didn't even take my time putting it on, I just kind of slopped it on. And actually I'm using icing, or some people call it sealskin. This is stuff that lays real smooth and real flat. If you wanted to, you can see there'll be no air bubbles whatsoever. It's very good stuff, it's very expensive stuff, but it works really well. Anyways, the reason I did mainly one coat and did a little bit thicker in areas, don't really care, is that the body filler will actually sand down much faster than the paint and the plastic will. So when you go to hit this thing, the body filler is mostly what's going to be coming off, and as long as I'm moving that sander fairly quick, I should be able to get the right shape that I need. There's not much work involved anyways, but this is the way you save about 400 bucks. All right, so the body filler is dry, but I'm gonna wait till tomorrow to sand it. It's got muggy out, starting to rain, and I'm ready to kind of call it quits for the night. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and show you something. So where the lower fog lights attach, you can see that they're no longer attached. And essentially all they do with these things is take panel bond and squeeze it between, and it goes through these little tiny holes here, and allows that to basically make it stick. So I'm going to drill a couple extra holes since these are already filled in, just to give it some ability to get through there. And I'm going to go ahead and use this right here. I use this on a lot of different things. It is almost exactly like Corvette body panel adhesive, so it works really, really well, and it's a lot cheaper if you go to your local hardware store and buy this than if you actually bought like Corvette panel bond or something from Tesla. So all I really got to do is do this section over here, this section here, and a little bit right there, and once that's done, that'll be good to go. So I'll do that, let this sit overnight, and we'll see what it looks like in the morning. What's up, guys? It is the next day. I went ahead and sanded off all the Bondo, and everything is attached to the back and holding well like it's supposed to. Here's the bumpers you can see right here. Again, it's tough to probably tell on camera. It's definitely more vivid on camera. You can see a lot more than it actually is in real life for whatever reason. But the bumper's all done. I just got to throw some primer on here right now. There might be a little bit more sanding afterwards, but the first layer of primer will kind of tell us exactly how smooth it is. I can tell there is a slight bit of a bump right here. I can feel it. That feels pretty good. Everything else seems pretty darn smooth. So I think we're going to be definitely good enough. So I'm going to hit it right now with some primer, then we'll see what that thing looks like. Overall, the contour actually looks pretty good. I didn't have any gray spray paint primer in a can for whatever reason. Black works fine. Eventually it's going to get completely primer anyways with real primer. But for now, again, I'm just kind of filling small things in, and rough surfaces are smoothing out with this primer. But one thing I wanted to show why it's still partially wet is usually the biggest demon of any bumper if it's been in an accident, and that is the spider cracks that you can kind of see right there. Now again, the camera kind of glorifies that, but you can really kind of see how they could become a headache because they're really hard to get rid of if you don't sand it down to the bare plastic, and then sometimes sanding down to bare plastic can make deformations, so not always the best thing. In my opinion, I like to get them as low as I can, as smooth as I can, and then I'll hit them with a couple coats of primer, and the primer kind of fills in those cracks, and a lot of times we'll get rid of it, but it'll take a couple times to do that. But like I said, overall the contour of everything looks actually pretty darn good from what I can tell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this completely dry. We'll hit it with a real fine sandpaper, do a couple layers, and hopefully all those little spider cracks will be gone, and then this thing will completely get sanded down and ready to paint. Now one thing I do want to point out, I kind of screwed up yesterday. I should have probably not went ahead and basically panel bonded the inner piece in right here, because this needs to be removed because it's actually black in there. So when we go ahead and remove all this, I can't really remove these now, but what I can do is just tape it off. So that's kind of what I'm going to be forced to do. I just want to point that out. If you guys are doing this, definitely take those out prior to doing your body work if you have to do so. But let me get ahead of this and get this thing finished. And there is our bumper. It's all been gutted and it's been primed. Now all I have to do is an overall sand for the finish priming, and it's good to go. We've got about 95% of the stress cracks out of the paint. The other 5% will be gone when we hit it with the final sanding. So we're good to go on this. This part's done. So moving forward, we're about to work on the door. Now, initially what I ordered was the whole new door shell. And essentially what that means is it means the entire shell, both the inside and the outside, would both be replaced. Unfortunately, what they sent me was a door skin. And I'll show you here. That's literally just the front skin of the door, just like it sounds. So what I have to do now, I could have waited for another door, but I think this one's repairable. The only real problem I have is its back part of it's bent just a little bit right here. I can probably straighten that out. I'm not really too concerned about that. At least I'm going to try. But what you'll see is what we have to do. I have to take a small Dremel, and I have to basically take cuts like this and pry this piece off of the basically the main inner shell. And essentially what I'll have to do is put that back on, and you'll see that these ones are kind of a 90-degree straight out, and there's a crimping tool that's made to do that, to put it right back in place. Now this isn't really that hard, because essentially with the door handle, that'll be our outline and what gets it lined back up, and then we'll have some parameters up front to have to make sure it's obviously aligned as well. Not too big of a deal, a little bit more work, but we're saving roughly $700 by doing it that way, so I guess it works out in the long run. I don't mind a little bit of work, and of course the idea of this build is to try to do it as cheap as possible. So right now what I'm going to do is, like I said, grab a Dremel, I'll take cuts out of here, and I'm going to see if I can pry the old skin off. And so you can see my stress relief cuts that I have put in the door right now. I got one little tiny bump to take out right there, as you can see, not really a big deal. However, I'm hoping that this isn't panel bonded. Normally they're not, I don't think. I think they're just pressed around. There's a tool you use, like I said, to crimp it. I'm hoping that's all, because I don't want to have to dig through panel bond as well. That kind of stink. But I didn't notice any smell or anything when I was cutting it down, so maybe we're good. Anyhow, let me go ahead and see if I can start prying this off. I haven't done the whole door yet. I just did this one side just to kind of test it, just to make sure it'd be all right. Well, let's see what the results are. As you can see, it is not panel bonded, luckily. But one thing I am noticing, though, because of this kind of weird angle, I was just using basically a chisel tool and just hitting it loose. And when I realized this is a bad angle, I can't really get in there. And I really don't want to damage the actual inner shell and get it out of shape, because that'd be a real problem. So I think probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some basically relief cuts on the outside of the door, being careful not to cut into the door, just cut the very shell itself so I can kind of peel this back. The reason I'm thinking that is because those ones there are really going to suck, so I know I can't get to those. So what I really need to do is be able to cut that across and peel that up. So I think I'm going to do a little test cut right here on the outer edge. I'm gonna peel an area back, and I'll see, I'll see if this thing comes off any easier than what I'm doing right now. And there is my relief clip, at least the very first start of it, and you'll see that there's a lot of flexibility. Now, I'm not trying to cut this part off, I'm actually trying to take the center out and then peel off the outers. So I'm gonna finish cutting all the way around this door and see if I can get the center off, and then see what we can do with the outer edges. So I just finished the cut with the angle grinders you see right there. I'm trying to be careful because I have bare hands right now, but this should, technically speaking, come out. I'm thinking there might be some of this bonding here inside there. Yeah, maybe against the center. You can see that piece right there. I feel like there probably is. Nothing's going to be easy. There's got to be something holding it to a certain degree. I can probably look from the inside, but again, if I look, I can see that panel made it right against it. That's thicker, and it probably is going to have to be separated one way or another. And bam, there you have it. So just like I told you, go ahead and use a long pry tool and a reciprocating saw with a long blade, because you got to be able to reach down in there. Go ahead and pull that thing back with that long tool that you have, and then get that reciprocating saw down in there and just cut down through. I was trying to be careful because I knew there was potential I could have cut in this metal. It did rub against it, but it didn't look like it really harmed it at all. So we're actually pretty good there. And once I got down to this part, the thing literally just ripped off and fell off. Be careful, because those edges are sharp, and well, your skin doesn't like sharp things. Okay, so there is panel bond. Not a whole lot of it, but there is some in there. It looks like the same stuff that I used to mount the windshields on. I don't think it's a big deal. All I did was peel it back, and it did separate. So I'm gonna keep working all the way around here and finish getting this stuff off. Okay, so I probably should have just Googled this. I don't know why I didn't, or at least look for another YouTube video. Anyways, what I did is I ended up just cutting 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Just barely enough to be able to touch the metal underneath or see that black come through, so I knew that I wasn't gonna cut the inner part. And then all I was really doing is just taking tile nippers like this right here, and then just kind of peeling it back. And by doing that, I'm keeping my edge perfectly straight, so I'm completely happy with that. I haven't tried to get this piece off yet. Well, it looks like there's really no issue with that. It comes right off. Okay, so that's basically the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to go around the whole entire door. I'm going to do exactly just that, and you'll see me peel it off, and then you'll see a door with absolutely no front fascia on it. It's officially skinless after a heck of a mess, but it actually wasn't really that hard at all, to be honest with you. I do have a little bit of work to do over here. Again, this is where it was dented in. That is going to have to get straightened out. You guys already know how I'm going to fix that. You guys seen me do the other panels. I'm essentially going to take the new door skin, take a piece of cardboard and go along the edge, and then I'll have to bend this thing to match that edge. It's pretty straightforward. All right, so I'm getting close. What I'm dealing with right now is I'm about 1/4 inch off just from here to here, and you'll notice that it's kind of dented in right here. The problem that I'm having is what happens if I do pull that out, this isn't going to be straight back and forth, it's going to be bent out like this, and that's not how we want to do that, because that's going to end up bending our door skin. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm actually have to take this door off and then probably use a hammer from the backside, because I can't get enough leverage to pry it to get that thing out because the metal's so thick. So I'm going to have to hammer it out with a mallet, which is fine. So what I got to do now is I basically take a pencil and I go ahead and mark along the edges to where my door was. It probably will have to move a little bit. I did notice the gap on the top of the door is probably about a 1/16 inch off. It needs to go that way. So either way, I'm going to mark this so I'll know where it's at, and it'll basically help me set back on after I pound this thing out. So I'm going to get this thing off real quick. I got one plug to unplug, I think, inside on the right control module, which is like kind of the fuse box thing inside. Not a fuse box, but you kind of get the idea. It's plugged in there. I'll unplug that, take these 6 bolts out. I should be able to pull this door off. I'll hammer it out, put it back on, and then see how it lines up. And there we go. I think I got everything a lot better lined up. You'll see there's a much better gap in the back there. If I go ahead and take my tool here and I look at exactly how it's shaped, it's kind of tough to tell right now without 2 hands. It's actually really close. So I think we're good there now. It is time to test fit that front skin. And so with 2 hands, we actually have a really good fitment. I'm super excited about that. So what I'm going to do right now is I need to put panel bond in the spots that we spoke about earlier. Normally I would use a windshield surround for rounding the edges, the adhesive that I use in the windshield, except it doesn't come out very well and I don't want to. So I'm just going to use straight up panel bond. I'm sure it'll be fine. We're going to go around the edge of the door and on those big spots that you saw earlier. And there is the door on right now. Again, I went ahead and clamped here, there, and there. Door's nicely held on right now, and now I just got to basically work corner or center to corner. Once that's done, the skin's on and it's good to go. So pretty excited about that. I think it turned out pretty darn well, and it seems to be fitting really darn well. So all right, there we go. It's all done, and I'll tell you what, it was a little bit of work once you got down to that bottom corner because you're kind of like hard to get to, but we got it done. We got some I'm waiting for a crimping tool to come to kind of smooth the edges on the inside a little bit. There is a couple areas like I see right here that looks a little bent in, so I'll be able to push that out a little ways and kind of work that out when I have it off the car, but I can't do that until I get it off the car. Obviously like this corner here I couldn't bend around because I couldn't get to it with the door open, so a couple little spots, but for overall I think it looks really good for what you'd expect it to. So now I gotta take the door back off, I gotta start getting this thing ready for prep and paint, and we're gonna move forward. So right now what I'm going to be doing is throwing a quick layer of primer on some of the parts. I don't really care about it being perfect. It doesn't have to be a perfect environment. I sanded it down, I aired it off, I wiped it down. For the most part, they're not perfect, but they're good enough because it's going to be a thick, buildable primer. And that's going to get another sanded layer, and then we're actually going to start the painting. But today, because it's just primer, I'm not going all out to do anything special. So right now I've got the primer mix. I'm letting it settle for a minute. I'm going to hit these with a quick coat, and then we'll let those dry. And I think tomorrow we're going to start painting. So we got our little portable booth set up right now. It's not necessarily optimal. As you can see, it's very tight, very hard to get into. I'm just gonna have to do my best to make sure everything is set up. Everything is taped off for the most part except the ceiling. I'm stuck within my lift, which is annoying. I've got 2 exhaust fans with 2 filters. So air movement is good. I just gotta make sure that nothing touches and I'm able to get around these things, not sweat on them and everything else. It's not gonna be easy. I don't expect this to come out perfect at all whatsoever. Again, very not optimal condition. So nonetheless, I'm going to spray it. This isn't going to be a painting video. This is just going to be a quick paint. You guys are going to see what it looks like. I think I'm going to do 2 coats of base, 1 to 2 of the mid pearl coat, and then obviously a clear over top of that. Unfortunately, the manufacturer didn't tell me how much I needed, and pearl is the #1 hardest color to spray next to like a flip-flop color to match. So it is what it is. I got to try. I do have a test panel sitting over there that I'm going to use. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's get into it. And there it is all done, and I'm going to tell you what, it actually turned out really well. To give you an idea of, I mean, if you didn't already kind of realize how small the space is, it's very small. And the fact that I'm not real skinny to get through these things was very tough, but I got it done. And I'm going to tell you, it's not glass, but it's about OEM finish, and there's not much shit in it. I mean, I don't know how, given that like it looks like a shitstorm outside with all the stuff flying through, pollen and cottonwood tree stuff and dandelions, and there's not crap everywhere. I don't understand it, and I'm not even questioning it, so it's all good. Now the front got a little bit of pepper, not pepper, but let's call it salt. Can't really see what it is, but a wet sand will get rid of that. Probably even a buff will get rid of that, so actually it's really good. Right now it's very sticky in here, so call it what you want, but like I said, I'm really happy. We're not obviously done with paint because we still have the quarter panel to do, but right now we are done with the body panels. They've got to sit overnight before we can even touch them, and then we're gonna start assembling them to get them back on. I think what we're gonna do, I don't know yet, but I think what we're gonna do is start with the back door, kind of align it to get it as close as I can to that quarter panel, and then do the front door, and then do the fender, and then the headlight. Hopefully that'll get everything lined up, because again, we know there's no real major frame damage that we can see, so I think we're gonna be okay. So anyways, good news so far. And so it's time to start putting some of these panels on. It is the next day. I did find a couple little runs, not a big deal. On the fender right here and down here, that's because of where it was sitting. I couldn't really see, so I wanted to make sure I had it on heavy rather than basically too thin. And that I did. And then the mirror cover had a little bit of a run. You can kind of see right there, which is all fixable. Not a big deal. I'm not worried about that. But I want to start getting this thing back together so we can get this thing to Tesla if we have to, and get this thing moving, because I'm getting sick of it being a big heavy weight sitting in the driveway. So nonetheless, what I need to do is I get these parts on. I'm going to start with the front door first, line it up to where the back door was, or is, the old door, and then what I'll do is I'll probably move to the front fender and the front bumper. And once those are all on, I'll work backwards to the rear door and the rear quarter. So let's get into it. All right, and front door and fender are on right now, and everything is aligned and looking good so far. I have a little bit of work to do on where the mirror connects. It's still kind of bent out just a hair, and the windows feels the resistance. It doesn't want to go up. While it will go up, the motors automatically recognize and kind of stop it from doing so. It's kind of a safety feature. So I got to work on that, not a big deal, but I think right now the next step is putting on this front bumper, and then once the front is complete, I can move on to the back door and move my way backwards. The only problem I'm having right now is that I bought a pedestrian warning speaker, which goes kind of down in this bottom corner. The problem is I don't see a two-prong wire harness for it, and I'm reading that some cars didn't come with it, so it may have been a worthless purchase, though it was only 40 bucks. And again, I don't care if my car farts, because that's actually where the noises come from for your custom horns and sounds or whatever. It doesn't come through the actual horns, it comes through that speaker. Nonetheless, though, like I said, I don't really care if I have it or not, but I'd like to at least put it there since I already paid for it. I'm probably not going to return it. So anyways, nonetheless, I'm going to put on this front bumper, get everything hooked up. I do know that I have a parking sensor fault. It says that one of them are a different sensor, even though they're all labeled as Valeo or Valero or whatever they're called. So I'm working through these little bit of problems. Again, I'm just trying to get it buttoned up so all this thing can be together and we can figure out mechanically how to get this stupid thing updated. Okay, so everything is bolted back up for the most part. I do have some small things to still do, like you'll see the parking sensor there, the lower covers that we need to put back on, a little bit of touch up, whatever, nothing big. We're working on all that, but what I need to move to right now is this rear quarter panel and obviously get this thing lined up as far as bodywork and filled in like it should be. I need to get that done so we can move forward and drop this rear end and take the motor out, because that rear motor mount needs welded. Not a big deal, but I don't even know if the motor is good, but at least I want to at least drop it down and make sure that that works. So when I bring it to Tesla, if I have to, they're not like, oh, you got a broken motor mount. You see where that's going to go. So I don't want there to be any excuses for them to charge for something that I don't want to pay for. So time to move forward and work on that. Finally, quarter panel is done. I think everything came out really nice. The only bad thing about it, if you look really close, you can see a little bit of a bump right there, and that's because the metal is actually pried out. I even grinded it down, but because this metal isn't very thick, I didn't want to grind it all the way through and have a potential issue where it cracks or separates when there's any pressure on it. So I'm gonna have to leave that tiny little bit of bump. Not a big deal. Overall, it looks really, really good. Now, I gotta do a final, basically light sand on this thing, get this panel ready for paint, just before we move forward to do the final wet sand and buff. So I went ahead and sprayed the jam here, and the reason why, even though I'm out in the elements right now and the car's not really taped off, I just kind of ragged everything over top it so it didn't get struck by paint. The reason I did that, excuse me, was the fact that I didn't want to have the door open and to have this painted while the rest of the car was being painted. I really kind of want to focus on just kind of like a big C when I spray it. So basically I'll tape the car off or basically plastic the car off, and I'll cut that section out, and then I'll tape along the edges, and I'll have just that to spray. I won't have to worry about anything else. I won't have to worry about this door being in my way. Now I had a little junk, obviously one bug right here. Could have been worse, but overall it looks pretty darn good, and I kind of blended it into everything else. So it should be fine. For now, we're gonna let this thing dry till morning, and then we'll be back, and then I'll spray the rest of the work. All right, guys, so fast forwarding to the future, I really wasn't happy with the quarter, the way it sat. I got a little bit better, but I still didn't like the fact that I didn't have much of a ridge here on the fender flare. So I went ahead and put this thing back up on the lift. As you'll see now, we are working in the future with our 2-post lift and much brighter lighting. It's much better. But you'll see right now, look how good that ledge came out, or that ridge on here. So same deal, we resprayed this whole section right here. Everything was taped off like we did before. Just a much better job, and virtually no trash in the paint also. I didn't think that would work that way because I have dust everywhere. I didn't really try hard at all. I just sprayed it, and well, so far so good. So I'm really happy the way this thing turned out so far. I think it is good enough where I won't have to use the new quarter. This thing is pretty clean, so it is time to move forward. Alright guys, we're going to call it a wraps for this video. I just want to let you know that a week from today, which I believe is February 9th, we're going to have another video that's coming out regarding the full bodywork of the vehicle, and then a following video after that that will be doing the entire interior, and then a finale or a final video that will be focusing on the total overall build cost, how well it went, the overall experience, you know, the support from the manufacturer, what we were able to get from the manufacturer, and help from others, and just overall total experience as to should you or should you not do this. That said, I hope you guys like this content. If you did, definitely hit that button. If you guys are not already subscribed, definitely do that right now, and I will see you on the next one.